If you're into haunted house stories, get ready, because the 5 you're about to hear will have you looking at the corners of your own home a little differently. Real cases, chilling accounts, and mysteries that were never explained. Like the one you're about to hear now, where a family realized far too late that they weren't alone in their new house. What began as harmless imaginary friends in their daughter's bedroom turned into sleepless nights and the constant feeling that something, or someone, was still there. But before we jump into the story, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of our terrifying stories. And tell me down in the comments, what city or country are you watching from? The first night, my daughter spoke to someone who wasn't there. We just moved in. The house was big, quiet, nestled in a neighborhood straight out of a 1950s margarine commercial. Neat rows of trees, clean sidewalks, neighbors waving like they actually meant it. It was everything we'd wanted after years of apartment living, with upstairs neighbors dragging furniture at midnight and some mystery dog barking from God knows where. Moving in was exhausting, like all moves are, but that part was normal. The truck unloaded everything by morning and we spent the day unpacking the essentials: beds, sheets, kitchen stuff. By nightfall, we were wiped. My wife crashed hard and I stayed up finishing our daughter's bed. Emily, 6 years old, had claimed her room the second she walked in. A second-floor bedroom with a little window overlooking a massive oak tree. She said it looked like a movie. That first night, something was already off. When I went to check on Emily, I heard her voice. Soft, talking to someone. I figured she was chatting with her dolls. I cracked the door open and asked who she was talking to. She turned to me with that easy confidence kids have and said, "The lady at the window." I didn't think much of it at the time. Smiled, kissed her goodnight, and shut the door. But something twisted in my gut. I'd just put that bed together. She hadn't had time to invent a new imaginary friend. And honestly, that wasn't her style. Over the next few days, little things started happening. Lights flickering, the TV turning on by itself, toys showing up in the wrong places. Nothing you could prove, nothing you could explain. I tried not to overthink it. Stress, new house, adjustment period. Everything had a logical explanation. Then came the sleep paralysis. I woke up in the dead of night. The room was pitch black except for the faint glow of a street lamp sneaking through the blinds. I tried to move, nothing. Tried to speak, nothing. And that's when I heard it. Breathing slow, deep inside the room. It wasn't my wife. She was facing away, her own breathing shallow. This was something else. Close, too close. Like it was standing at the foot of the bed. And the rhythm was wrong. Like someone trying to breathe through a punctured lung. I couldn't see anything, but I felt it. A presence, thick and heavy, like the air itself had gained weight. A pressure pinning me down. When I finally broke free, it was gone. I bolted upright, drenched in cold sweat, and flipped on the light. Empty room. I didn't mention it the next morning. Felt stupid. But the sensation clung to me all day, and worse. I realized it wasn't the first time. Since we'd moved in, there were moments when I swore someone was watching me, especially in the second-floor hallway. I'd walk past and have to look back, every time, like something was standing just out of sight. The breaking point came one evening after dinner. I went upstairs to tuck Emily in. She was sitting on her bed, staring out the window. "You okay, kiddo?" She didn't take her eyes off the glass. "She's mad at you, Dad." My blood turned to ice. I sat beside her, forced to smile. "Mad at me? Why?" "Because you're trying to make her leave, and she doesn't like that." I stood up, done. Went downstairs, marched into the living room and shouted. Didn't care if I sounded crazy. Told whatever was in that house it wasn't welcome. That this was our home. That it needed to go. I don't know who or what I was talking to, but I meant every word. And for a while it worked. The house felt lighter, like the air had cleared. Emily went back to playing like normal. The light stopped flickering. I started to think maybe it had all been stress, imagination, exhaustion. Maybe I'd spiraled. Then we moved Emily's room. Hers was the farthest one down the hall, and we thought she'd sleep better closer to ours. Simple switch. New bed set up, toys arranged, all good. That night, though, Emily cried. Not just any cry, the kind that jolts you out of bed before you're even awake. When I ran into her new room, she was curled into a corner, eyes wide, face soaked. "Dad, she's here." Her voice shook. "She came with us." I knelt down, pulled her into a hug, tried to calm her, asked where she saw the lady. Emily pointed to the corner. Empty. But I swear, just for a second, the air there felt colder, like a draft hitting one exact spot. A weird, prickling sensation like pins under my skin. My wife rushed in moments later. We spent an hour trying to settle Emily. Warm milk, a nightlight, my promise to stay until she fell asleep. And I did. But that night changed everything. Emily's fear wasn't some vague, imaginative kid thing anymore. She was terrified, and I couldn't pretend it was coincidence. I needed to understand what was happening in that house, because whatever I'd felt before, this was different. Like the thing had stopped hiding, like it was showing us it was there, and it wasn't planning to leave. The next few days, the air in the house turned heavy again, but it wasn't the same weight as before. Now it felt like it knew we were scared, like it fed on that. Emily barely ate, avoided her room, and started refusing to be alone, even in the bathroom. The house's energy was tainted, like the walls held something we couldn't see but could feel, always. We tried to go about our lives, but it was impossible to ignore. One morning, Emily called for me, crying again. This time, she didn't say a word, just pointed at the corner, trembling, eyes huge. And in that same spot, the air was thick, icy, with a strange smell like damp cloth left in a basement too long. The presence wasn't subtle anymore. It was like it had taken shape, even if we couldn't see it. That night, I snapped, stormed into the room and shouted again. But this time my voice came out different, raw, charged. I said I knew it was there, that if it didn't leave, I'd bring someone, a priest, a pastor, anyone. But it was going. It wouldn't keep tormenting my daughter. The second I finished, I heard it. A voice, nowhere and everywhere, weak, dragged out, almost a whisper. "She's in mine." That broke me. My wife went pale, grabbed Emily and ran. I stood frozen. The silence that followed was worse, thick, like the house was holding its breath. We spent that night doing everything we could to calm Emily. Every light on, the TV murmuring in the hallway, the three of us crowded into her bed until she finally slept. And strangely, it worked. For a few hours, the house felt normal, but I knew it was just a pause. By then, I was deep diving into every forum, video, and article about haunted houses, negative energy, spiritual attachments. Turns out, when a place holds enough pain, enough death, it leaves a mark. A kind of knot that drains the life out of whoever lives there. And the more vulnerable you are, the easier it is to get to you. I asked our oldest neighbor, Mr. Harlan, if he knew anything about the previous owners. He got real quiet before answering. Said years back, a woman lived there alone with her little girl. The kid died in her sleep. No one knew how. After that, the mother lost it. Claimed her daughter was still there, playing with her. Then one day, she vanished. No one knew if she left or if something else happened. Folks didn't talk about it much. That hit me like a truck. The lady at the window. Emily's room choice. The breathing. The voice saying the girl was hers. That night, I lay beside Emily, staring at the ceiling, listening for anything unusual. Couldn't sleep. And just when I thought it was over, I heard it. Footsteps. Light. Quick. Like a barefoot child running down the hall. I bolted up. Empty hallway. But the air was cold again. A deep, bone-chilling cold. I went back to the room and found Emily wide awake, sitting up, eyes locked on the door. "She's still here, Dad." I didn't know what to do anymore. The helplessness was crushing. Fighting something with no face, no body. Something that knew exactly how to hurt us. We considered moving, but the truth? The fear followed us. Even outside that house, the memory of it crept into our dreams, our quietest thoughts. And the worst part? We never found out what it was. No face, no name, no clear explanation. Just that constant invisible presence, leaving scars deeper than the ones on the walls. Because some houses don't just hold history. Some houses have open wounds. And when you step inside, those wounds split open again. and what comes out doesn't always want to leave. Creepy, right? What did you think of the story? On a scale of 0 to 10, what rating would you give it? Drop your answer in the comments. When a dark presence enters a child's bedroom, you can't just brush it off as imagination. But what do you say when even the neighbors start seeing a strange figure wandering the halls of an entire apartment building, like in the story you're about to hear now? At first we thought it was all in our heads. Creaky pipes, wind rattling the old building, the groans of a settling foundation, you know, the usual stuff. But then our dog started acting weird. That's when I knew something was off about that apartment. We just moved in after my husband Jake got transferred for work. The building was old, like 1960s old. But the outside had been redone so it looked decent. Inside though, pure time capsule. Vintage tiles, those tall baseboards, light switches that clicked like they were protesting. It had charm, sure, but also this weight in the air. The kind you don't notice at first. Then came the feeling of being watched. It wasn't constant, but sometimes, when I walked down the hallway at night or stood at the kitchen sink, it was like someone was right behind me. I never saw anything. But that presence? It lingered. I chalked it up to stress from the move. Things got real when we met our upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. Sweet old lady. One day in the elevator, she casually mentioned that a guy who used to live in the apartment next to ours had passed right there during Christmas lunch. Just like that. Like she was talking about the weather. Said the whole family was gathered when it happened. A sudden event, she called it. My blood ran cold. She added that after that, the floor just felt different. Some folks even moved out not long after. That's when we started hearing voices. The first time I woke up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. On my way back, I heard a woman's voice, soft, almost whispering, calling my name. I thought it was my mom who was staying with us at the time. But when I checked her room, she was dead asleep. I didn't say a word about it the next morning. Then, a few nights later, I heard it again. This time she was singing. Some old nursery rhyme I didn't recognize. The hair on my arms stood straight up. It sounded like the voice was coming from inside the hallway closet. Our daughter's dog, Scout, a scruffy, lovable mutt, started acting strange. Every night between 3 and 4 a.m. he'd bolt upright, plant himself in the middle of the hallway, and stare at one specific wall. Sometimes he'd growl. Other times he'd bark like someone was right there. And I swear, like clockwork at 3:10 a.m., the motion sensor lights in the hallway would flicker on by themselves. No one was there. One night I peeked through the peephole and saw the light glowing, but the hall was empty. I called the night security guard to check it out. He did a sweep, said he didn't see anyone. Then he pulled up the camera footage, and that's when he dropped the bomb. Turns out he and the other guards had seen stuff too. A white figure near the parking garage that would just vanish mid-step. And that wasn't all. Sometimes in the dead of night they'd hear screams and whistles from the garage, always at the same time. But when they went down to investigate, nothing, no cars, no people, nothing. One neighbor told me in the elevator that he'd seen a dark shape in the basement. Said he went down to grab an old box and found something crouched in the corner. When he shined his flashlight, it scuttled into one of the old storage units and disappeared. Dude went sheet white. Said he never went down there alone again. The final straw? I was folding laundry in the living room when out of the corner of my eye, I saw a little girl run down the hallway. White dress, long black hair covering her face. It was fast, but clear. I called my daughter, thinking it was her messing around, but she was in her room watching cartoons. Hadn't moved. At the same moment, Scout started losing it. Barking, trembling, then diving under the table. He refused to come out even after I coaxed him for ages. I'd never seen him like that. He was terrified. After that night, things got unbearable. Footsteps in the hall, doors slamming on their own, the bathroom light turning on by itself. Even Jake, who'd always scoffed at ghost stories, started admitting something was up. My mom took to praying every night. Said the air in the apartment felt thick like it was pressing down on her chest. One night, I snapped. I woke up to Scout barking, the hallway light on. And that feeling, like something was staring at me from the other side of the door. I shouted loud as hell, "I don't know who you are or what you want, but leave my home alone, leave my dog alone, get out." The silence that followed was deafening, like the whole apartment was holding its breath. After that, the activity stopped. No more lights flickering, no more singing, no more 3 a.m. barking fits. The place still felt off, but the oppressive weight lifted little by little. Still, I'll never forget it. To this day, if I hear a whistle or a creak in the hallway, my body locks up. We moved out a year later, officially, for other reasons. But deep down, I think that apartment had shown us all it needed to. Whatever was left behind there, I don't want to understand. I just hope it stayed put, and that it didn't follow us. Scary, isn't it? It's not only the people living inside who notice when something's wrong. Sometimes even the animals sense it. And in an old country house, standing alone for over 2 centuries, even the walls seem to hold on to ancient secrets. The next story proves it. I can still remember the smell of old wood mixed with the faintest hint of rosewater every time I step into an antique house. It's like my body reacts before my brain even catches up. That's exactly how it felt when I first started working for the State Forestry Service nearly 8 years ago. Our team's base was in this old farmhouse, one of those creaky, wrap-around porch kinds of places where the floorboards groan with every gust of wind. No one knew for sure how many owners it had had, but the record said it was built in 1770. Over 2 centuries of history trapped between those walls, watching us. The first time I walked in alone, I got this weird chill down my spine. Not the kind from AC, dry, sickly, like the air itself was wrong. The kitchen was huge, with white cabinets and metal handles that looked like they'd been replaced recently. But it didn't take long to realize those cabinet doors had a mind of their own. I'd shut them, double-check, and when I turned back, bam, wide open again. I blamed the wind, the foundation settling, whatever. At first, you always try to rationalize it. But the basement, that's what really got to me. There was a side entrance with concrete steps leading down to packed dirt. The light down there was weak, yellowed, and at the far end was a windowless room, used back in the day for developing photos. The door was thick, lined inside to block out light. I never went in there with the door closed. Even when I had to organize files from the old cabinet nearby, I'd leave everything wide open, the stairs, the door, just to feel like I had an escape route. The feeling of being watched was worse down there, always. Like something was waiting for me to turn my back. One time I dropped a box of files, and when I bent down I felt breath on my neck. I whipped around, ready to scream, but no one was there. Just the dim hallway and the muffled thud of my own heartbeat. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it kept happening. 1 minute, footsteps at the top of the stairs while I was still below. The next, a shadow flickering at the edge of my vision. The kind of thing you don't bring up at lunch because, let's be real, no one wants to sound crazy. But I wasn't the only one. Our admin, Carol, was way more open about it. She'd say they were here first, and we just had to learn to share the space. Sometimes she'd talk to herself mid-shift. Not the absent-minded kind, but full-on conversations down the hallway. Stuff like, "I got it, but you gotta stop now, okay?" I laughed the first time I heard it, but then I noticed the noises did usually stop after. Once I asked what she heard, and she just said, "Things that ain't your business." After that, I never asked again. Over time, the house's routine got weirder. The footsteps in the hall gained weight, like someone in thick-soled boots. The sound was different, sharper, and sometimes it echoed upstairs like a whole parade was marching up there. We'd joke it was the forest foreman coming to check on us, but no one ever really laughed. Then there was Ray, our janitor, a quiet guy in his 60s. One day he pulled me aside and said he'd heard someone call his name in the middle of the night. He thought it was one of us and tapped the wall back like he always did. Said he waited for a response and got 3 knocks from the basement. Problem was, no one was there. Not me, not Carol, not even our boss. And definitely no one who'd mess around like that. Speaking of our boss, Amanda was the ultimate skeptic. All business, black coffee, no sugar, no time for superstition. Until the day she showed up pale as a ghost. saying she'd seen a tall, dark figure glide straight through the main hallway. She said it didn't walk, it floated, and that wasn't all. 2 weeks later, while she was finishing reports late one night, a blue orb, yes, blue, drifted into the den and passed through the wall like electric smoke. She tried to record it on her phone, but of course, nothing showed up. At the back of the meeting room was this old stone fireplace and a massive bookshelf full of technical manuals. One day, I was organizing files when I saw a man in the window's reflection behind me. He wore a long coat with brass buttons and tight trousers, straight out of the 1800s. When I turned, he walked slowly toward the stairs and vanished right there on the second step. No way he could have slipped out. He just wasn't there anymore. After that, I started digging on my own. I went to the town archives, combed through old newspapers, property records, anything that might explain the house's past. Turns out it had been a one-room schoolhouse, then a makeshift hospital during a typhoid outbreak in the 1800s, and even a soldier's barracks during some local skirmish. That might explain the guy in period clothes, but it didn't explain the music. Oh yeah, the music. Carol played me a recording she'd made one night when she was there alone. The place was empty. Security footage confirmed it. But on her phone's audio, you could clearly hear piano music drifting from the den. Soft, melancholic, like someone playing the same song on repeat. The weirdest part? There was no piano in that house. All of this unfolded over about 2 years. Little things at first, then bigger. The kind of stuff that seeps into your routine until it feels normal. And as bizarre as it sounds, we adapted. We developed these weird little rituals, knocking twice on the door frame before entering the basement, turning on the backroom light first thing. The kind of things people do when they're pretending to be in control. But we weren't. The truth was, the house did what it wanted, and we were just borrowing the space. Things went off the rails when they announced the funding was getting cut. The Forestry Service was moving to a sleek new building, all glass and sensors and modern everything. Everyone was excited, except me. There was something in that house that didn't want to be left behind. In those last days, the activity spiked. Cabinets slammed shut on their own. The piano music came back, louder. The smell of rot hung in the air. And worst of all, that feeling of being watched. It followed me home. The final week I was alone to wrap up the last of the files. The house was silent, but the air was wrong. The rosewater scent was overpowering, like someone had dumped a whole bottle. When I went down to the basement for some old boxes, the hallway lights flickered 3 times, then died. I used my phone as a flashlight, and as I passed the dark room, I heard Carol's voice whisper my name. But Carol had already moved out 2 days earlier. I froze, scanned the darkness. Nothing. Then from the far end, heavy footsteps, like soldiers' boots dragging through dirt. And then silence. The kind that hurts. I bolted upstairs, locking everything behind me. When I finally got outside, I couldn't bring myself to look back. The house has been abandoned ever since. But me? I still ride by on my bike some weekends, taking the forest trail that cuts past it. And every time I see a figure on the porch, sometimes it's the man in the old coat. Sometimes it's that blue orb glowing in the dark. But there are days when I hear my name from inside, like the house still remembers me, and it's waiting for the day I come back. That's bizarre. When more than one person witnesses the same thing, it's hard to deny that something's really there. But what about when it all happens in the silence of a dark bedroom, with no witnesses, like in the story coming up next, where a simple radio broadcast marked the beginning of something terrifying? But before we continue, if you've made it this far, it means you're enjoying these stories. So go ahead and hit the like button. It lets YouTube know you want more content like this, and you won't miss any of our future horror stories. That night, the radio just changed, on its own, without me touching it, and I swear on everything I hold sacred. That's when things really started to go sideways. It was 1999, and I'd just gotten home from work. I was pulling shifts at a fast food joint about 15 minutes from my house. Weekends only, just to scrape together some cash. My parents and my little brother were out of town, visiting relatives in Vermont. I'd opted to stay behind. Needed to cram for a test, and honestly, after spending my Saturday flipping burgers and listening to the kitchen radio blast terrible pop music, all I wanted was a hot shower, a decent snack, and my bed. I remember it was around 10:30 at night. I was on the couch halfway through a sandwich, the TV murmuring in the background, when the radio in my bedroom turned itself on. Now it wasn't unheard of for someone to leave the alarm button pressed by accident, but the sound that came out of it. That wasn't an alarm. It was pure static. That white noise that swallows up every other sound in the house. Here's the kicker. The night before, I'd left it tuned to my usual station, a pop FM channel. But now, it was locked onto some AM frequency, blasting this high-pitched metallic interference, almost like whispered voices tangled up in the static. I headed upstairs slowly, figuring maybe the power had flickered or something. But the hallway light was on. Everything seemed normal. When I reached my room, the radio was still on, its little red light blinking. I walked over and turned it off. That's it. That's all I did. But in that moment, something shifted. It was like the house took a deep breath. I tried to brush it off, went back downstairs, finished my sandwich, washed the dishes, and headed to bed. But when I turned off the light, I got this weird feeling, like someone was standing right there in the corner between the dresser and the window. You know that sensation? When you know something's watching you, even though you can't see it? Yeah, I didn't see anything, but I couldn't look directly at that spot. Every time I tried, my eyes just slid away on their own. I pulled the covers up to my chin and faced the other way. Didn't help much. Over the next few days, it got worse. Every time I tried to sleep, I'd catch this fast-moving shadow out of the corner of my eye. Never clear enough to make out, just a blur, darting past my peripheral vision. And when I'd whip my head around, nothing. At first, I chalked it up to exhaustion, stress. Maybe I was just losing it. But then I started noticing something even stranger. When I closed my eyes, the mattress would vibrate. Not like a phone buzzing, but this subtle, constant hum. Like the air itself was charged. Like there was some kind of energy, pulsing, trying to keep me awake. Some nights I'd toss and turn for hours, and just as I'd finally start to drift off, I'd jolt awake with the feeling that someone had just sat down on the edge of my bed. Then, one night, must have been just past midnight, I was almost asleep when I felt this sudden cold. But it was summer, and the fan was off. I opened my eyes, and that's when I saw her. Right beside my bed, like she'd just materialized out of thin air. A figure. Not exactly a person, more like a projection. A greenish hologram of a woman standing there. She was thin, her hair pulled back in some old-fashioned bun, wearing this long, outdated dress. But the weirdest part? I could see through her, like she was made of light, and yet somehow solid. I froze, couldn't scream, couldn't move. My whole body locked up, like something was holding me there, forcing me to look. And she was looking right back, with this empty, deep stare, like she could see straight through me, like she knew me, like she was there because of me. I don't know how, but I started praying, just a trembling whisper. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I must have repeated it 20 times, maybe more, and slowly, she started to fade. Not all at once. It was like she was dissolving into tiny green particles that scattered into the air and vanished. After that, the room felt different. The air lighter, the energy less suffocating. But I knew she'd left her mark. The next day, I told my mom. She'd just gotten back from her trip, and we were having coffee when I decided to spill everything. The radio, the shadows, the vibrations, the green woman. I figured she'd laugh, or tell me I was imagining things. But she went dead serious. Set her mug down in the sink and leaned both hands on the counter. "You saw her too?" she asked, almost whispering. I was stunned. She'd never mentioned anything like this before. But then she started telling me some heavy stuff. Said that years ago when we were little, she'd felt things in that room too. Heard footsteps at night like someone was pacing in circles. Smelled this old, musty perfume out of nowhere. And one night, right after we'd moved in, She watched a glass ashtray fly off the shelf and shatter against the wall. No wind. No one in the room. The thing just launched itself. Another time, she was home alone and heard the upstairs shower turn on. She ran up there thinking someone had broken in, but the bathroom was empty, and the water was scalding. She told me all this like it was no big deal, like she was finally getting something off her chest. We started talking about the house more after that. Turns out it was built in the 1950s by a woman named Margaret Slater, a widow, no kids. Lived there alone until she died in 1972. People said she was a recluse, kind of bitter, and that no one really liked visiting her. She died alone, in the room that would later become mine. No one knows exactly how, but somehow her energy never left. After that, I never saw the green woman again, but that feeling of something being there, that never totally went away. Every now and then I'd still get that creepy crawly sensation down my spine, like this negative energy hanging in the air. Like even years later she was still there, watching. And the worst part? Sometimes, the radio still turns itself on. Chilling, right? What did you think of that one? On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate it? Share your thoughts in the comments. The first weird thing happened before we'd even finished unpacking. We'd just moved into a new apartment. Like, just moved in. My dad had rushed the deal after some nasty drama with the old landlord, who suddenly showed up saying he needed the place back for urgent personal reasons. Nobody really got it, but my dad was done with the guy's nonsense, so when this apartment popped up at a price that seemed too good to be true for the neighborhood, he didn't hesitate, signed the lease the same day. The building was old, one of those places with narrow hallways, creaky hardwood floors, and an elevator that sounded like it was on its last legs. It smelled like damp wood and mildew, the kind of musty odor that clings to things that haven't seen sunlight in decades. My mom tried to hide her unease with a tight-lipped smile, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled. My little brother, though, he was hyped. Me, I just had this feeling, like something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. The first few days were all about assembling furniture, unpacking boxes, and trying to make the place feel like home. There was constant noise, people moving around, the scrape of cardboard, the thud of half-empty boxes hitting the floor. But even with all that chaos, there was one moment that made my skin crawl. We were all in the living room, my dad struggling to put together some makeshift shelf with scrap wood, when I heard my parents' bedroom door slam shut. Not a draft, not a gentle click. A sharp, forceful thud, like someone had thrown it closed. I turned instinctively and saw someone inside the room. The door was cracked open, and through the gap I swear I saw my brother's silhouette. Same height, same haircut, even the same t-shirt he'd been wearing that day. Without thinking, I marched over and shoved the door wide open. But the room was empty. No one. The window was shut, the curtains still in plastic, not a light on. I went back to the living room, confused, and found my brother sprawled on the couch, shoving chips into his mouth. He hadn't moved an inch. I brushed it off, chalked it up to exhaustion from the move. You know how your brain plays tricks on you when you're wiped out? That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I started hearing noises from my desk. I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor. My bed frame wasn't set up yet, and the desk was right by the window. First, a faint creak, like something was dragging across the wood. Then a soft thump, like an object had landed on it. I sat up slowly, grabbed my phone, and shone the flashlight. Nothing out of place. No fallen pens, no shifted papers. The chair was exactly where I'd left it. I lay back down, pulling the blanket up to my chin. But then, scratching. Long, rhythmic scrapes like someone was running their fingernails across the desk's surface. My blood turned to ice. I wasn't imagining this. It was real. For some reason, maybe to prove I wasn't scared, maybe to call its bluff, I whispered, "If you're really there, make a noise." 3 sharp knocks rattled the desk. Thud, thud, thud. My stomach dropped. It was like something conscious had answered. The air got heavier, like the room itself was holding its breath. I was frozen, but also weirdly curious. I sat up, staring at the desk, and started talking to it. Asked if it lived here, If it was mad, we'd moved in. I don't know why I kept going. Maybe because part of me still hoped it was all in my head. But it kept answering. 1 knock for yes, 2 for no. This conversation went on for half an hour. I'd ask a question, wait for the response. Some answers were straightforward. Were you human? Thud. Did you die here? Thud thud. Is someone else here with you? Silence. Do you want us to leave? Thud. With every answer, the dread in my gut grew. My whole body buzzed, like I'd stuck my finger in a socket. And the worst part? I couldn't stop. It was like I was in a trance, pulled into this twisted back and forth with whatever it was. The last question I had the nerve to ask was, "Can you prove you're really here?" The response was 3 knocks so violent the desk shuddered. That's when I realized, this thing wasn't messing around. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there stiff as a board, listening to every creak and groan of the apartment like it was a warning. Like something was circling, waiting for me to close my eyes so it could get closer. The next morning, nobody said a word. Business as usual. Mom organizing cabinets, Dad cursing at the Wi-Fi, my brother glued to his handheld game. Meanwhile, I moved through the apartment like I was walking on glass. Every door squeak made me whip around. Every shadow in the corner of my eye made me second guess if I was alone. I forced myself to go back into my room that afternoon, looking for any physical proof of what had happened. I checked under the desk, ran my hands over the surface. Nothing. Not a scratch, not a dent. The wood was pristine. That should have relieved me, but it just made it worse. The sounds I'd heard hadn't been quiet. The desk had moved. There should have been marks. Over the next few days, the feeling of being watched never left. Sometimes I'd convince myself it was all in my head, until little things started happening. A glass in a different spot. A kitchen cabinet left ajar when I knew I'd closed it. The faucet dripping for no reason, even when the water pressure was fine. Small random stuff, but it added up like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. Then came the night I woke up to the air feeling wrong. My room was pitch black and the atmosphere was thick, like invisible smoke filling the space. I got up for water, tiptoeing down the hall, the floorboards groaning under my feet. The whole house was silent except for my heartbeat hammering in my ears. As I passed my parents' room, I caught a glimpse out of the corner of my eye, a figure sitting on the edge of their bed. In the dim light, I could make out a kid, hunched over, hands in their lap, head bowed. I froze. My first thought was my brother, but I knew it wasn't. Because at that exact moment, my brother was fast asleep on his mattress next to mine, snoring like a chainsaw. The figure in my parents' room slowly lifted its head. I couldn't see its face, just this emptiness. No expression, no life. I bolted back to my room, slammed the door, and dove under the covers like that would somehow shield me. I didn't sleep again that night, and I never told a soul. After that, the activity died down. The house felt quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence after a storm, when the air still hums with tension. I avoided being alone, but it wasn't always possible. Even with my family around, I felt it. The weight of something lingering, watching, waiting. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to dig for answers. I researched the building, the apartment's previous tenant. There wasn't much, but I found one old forum post that made my skin prickle. Some guy had written that he'd lived there before and moved out because of things that happened at night. No details, no explanation, just that. But for me, it was enough. I tried to rationalize it, to find some logical explanation, but the harder I searched, the further from reason I got. Because there was no explanation, no fix. It was like the whole thing had happened just to mark me, to show me there are forces we can't control, or even understand. The experience left me with this lingering fear. Not the kind where you're scared of something jumping out at you. It's worse. It's the fear of what might be right there, listening, watching, sitting in the corner of the room, silent, waiting. Even now, years later, that night is burned into my memory. The sounds, the knocks, the sense that I was talking to something that shouldn't exist. I never found out what it was or why it showed up. All I know is, after that night, I've never truly felt alone again, even when I am. I've learned to live with it, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't have a choice. You accept what you can't understand when you realize fighting the unknown changes nothing. The best you can do is respect the silence and pray it doesn't answer back. If you've stayed with me until now, thanks a lot. Stories like these aren't just jump scares, they stick with you, don't they? If this content connected with you, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. We've got brand new stories every single week. And leave a comment down below with "Last Knock," just so I'll know who's really brave enough to stick it out until the end. Oh, and of course, smash that like button if any of these stories truly gave you chills. It helps a ton and shows me this kind of content is hitting the mark. There's another video right here that'll mess with your head too. Click it and keep going with me over there.